So how many of you, and actually when you eat, within a few minutes to maybe a couple of hours, you start to experience a belly bloat. In fact, sometimes they call it, I have a food belly, or I have a pregnant food belly. Number one of the biggest reasons why people will get bloating is because of low stomach acid. Low stomach acid is caused by stress, and this can be mental, it can be physical, and be chemical. But anytime that you are in a low stomach acid environment, you fail to break down your proteins. You also fail to adequately sterilize your food. And what happens is those proteins can make their way down into the small intestine. You can also be picking up some extra bacteria that don't get sterilized that can cause infection. But anytime that you don't break down your food with adequate stomach acid, is that those full proteins have the ability to leak across the barrier of the small intestine and cause an immune system reaction. And that immune system reaction can cause bloating. Well, it can also cause problems with joint pain, brain fog. It can cause water retention, swelling, things like that. But you can also get bloating too when you eat certain foods, when you have an infection. So, and this has to do with SIBO. And so you can get bacteria that belong in the colon, and they can start crawling into the bottom part of the small intestine. Remember, you have 6 feet of intestine, small intestine, but they can then go into the small intestine only because there's a good environment for it. And that's where you have a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So what will happen is that will ferment, the food will ferment in the small intestine versus the large intestine. And the large intestine has a big diameter. So when it ferments, you don't notice that there's an increase in gas because the large intestine is so big. But when you got 6 feet of small intestine that are only about an inch in diameter, and that begins to expand, well, when you have 6 feet of it, you'll notice that your belly starts to protrude. Some people even have a yeast overgrowth as well. So you give a lot of sugar and you'll get a lot of metabolization of those sugars from the yeast. You'll get a gas, off gassing when it metabolizes that sugar and it stays in the intestines. Now, everybody thinks they catch an infection. Everybody thinks they catch SIBO. Everybody thinks they catch yeast. The biggest thing that I will tell you is the biggest contributor to these things is low stomach acid and also not having proper gallbladder function, because it's the enzymes in the pancreas, it's the gallbladder, and it's the stomach acid that keeps those things where they belong. If you don't have adequate levels of those, then all you're doing is creating an environment where that bacteria can grow in a different environment versus staying in the large intestine. And so that's why, guys, stomach acid is so important.